Report, and we have Dr. Bob from MicroPulse. So, Dr. Bob, tell us the latest of what's going on in MicroPulse in terms of your research areas, the applications, the kind of feedback you're getting from people to get a MicroPulse device.
Well, it's good to talk to you again, Dr. Bill. We're actually trying to set up several studies right now. I have a study for spinal cord injury that I've put together, and that's run by an independent research laboratory.
Good.
That's been put together. That would actually have to be run in Finland, believe it or not, and it's a comprehensive study on the effects of ISIS on both secondary and primary spinal cord injury. So that'll prove once and for all categorically whether or not we're able to really benefit that. And we have a lot of evidence already to indicate that we do have a great benefit. So we're just looking forward to that. Setting up human orthopedic injury trials with a clinic that I work with. It's an orthopedic surgery and rehab medicine clinic in Nebraska, and we're putting that through an IRB right now, which is the institutional review board necessary to review all human subjects research.
Right.
Also, I have 3 collaborations that I'm developing to study the intracellular signaling mechanisms that are activated by ISIS. So the idea there is not so much a clinical study, but a basic scientific research study to test the effects of ISIS on actual cellular signaling mechanisms. If it's actually doing something, which we know it is, the question is, what is the signal that the cell is picking up? And that turns out to be a rather challenging thing to do, because ISIS is a very low-level, very, very high signal-to-noise ratio signal. And the question is it transduced through known cellular signaling mechanisms, or is it a new class of signaling mechanisms, or some combination of the two? So That's what I've got going on now.
Now, of course, I did some interesting kind of tinkering in my office I call laboratory back in Denver. And I had a microcircuit testing device from Keithley Enterprises that would measure picovolts and microamps. And you could actually do a spectral analysis over the acupoints of different conduction points in the body. And the way to think about it's inside the cell and between cells and tissues in the full organ of the body, the brain has what's called an epigenetic signaling capacity. So that if you look at neurofibromatosis or nerve conditions, you get gigantism of an arm, or you get a neurotropic effect on organ development. That's why if you take out a heart or liver or lungs, they don't keep their cellular organization long, even if you put them on a life support device. You need to have that neurotropic effect. And what I discovered was that the signaling was you could actually get a spectral analysis of the signaling just like a microchip. And I presented a paper 33 years ago called Phonon Maser Biophysics, which means there are integrated 3 different energetic systems. Phonons, which are coherent sound, or the vibration of biomolecules in water, which is a harmonic, if you want to call it normal temperature informational superconductor. It's an informational superconductor because of the hydrogen bonding. And it would also be an infrared frequency of infrared light, because if you look at the biophotons, they're actually the vibration of molecules in solution are infrared, far and near infrared. And the third area is each of these, because they're biophotonic, they travel along the collagen side groups, the proline side groups of collagen in the body. So collagen is, in a sense, the framework upon which the epigenetics of organs are developed. So that's why when you have a ghost organ, like a heart from a sheep, and you infuse it with stem cells from a person, you start to get epigenetic activation to turn it into a cardiomyocyte that starts pulsatile action at the University of Minnesota. So my guess is that the way to amplify your technology is to take something like our Mountain Red Velvet. So I'm working with a company to try to get a surgical version developed by a pharmaceutical company of Mountain Red Velvet. So when you use your technology, you have a signal transducer in the tissue, because you're trying to reproduce conditions of the fetus. So we do that right now with our nutraceuticals to amplify healing with Mountain Red Velvet, Collagen Max, MycoD2, which is ergothioneine, the first marker that's released, a gene-activated receptor, where your stem cells are activating, MyCell D3, MycoD2, etc. And when we use the signal transduction of the micropulse, like we had a gentleman earlier that had a consult regarding his spine and didn't want to do a spinoplasty surgery, the solution is to turn off the cytokines in his dural sleeve with tumor necrosis factor alpha, IFN gamma, etc., and then to activate the healing using the micropulse on his neck, and give him the right signal transducer, things like mountain red velvet, so that he actually increases that signal to noise, and you have the signal and the substance, and boom, you start to heal. And we've already had cases that have done that. They've actually avoided surgery on their knees, on their spine, on their periphery, on their carpal tunnel, or on their tarsal tunnel syndrome in their feet, simply by using your device, the micropulse, and taking the right substance. It's pretty dynamic, and it's pretty powerful, and I really believe I'd like to see a surgical version, either a microgranule or intravenous or surgical strips or powder for a surgeon to use, so they could literally infuse the circumstances like a fetus or present in a fetal tissue when the child is developing in utero. Fetus means Latin for just little one or little human being, so it's not an animal or another species, and simply using the micropulse to amplify that signal to noise so things start regenerating. And I don't believe that there's any age where people can't regenerate. I think that even when you're 82, you get 2 to 5% stem cells that are just as healthy as when you're a newborn. It's just a matter of marshalling them and having the signal to noise so there's that transducer molecules and the right signal to get things rocking and rolling. And when I hear people that say, look, their surgeons waving a knife at them, $200,000 or $300,000 surgery for their spine, and they could avoid it by simply taking supplements and putting a micropulse and walking around with it all day long. Like, why not? I mean,
well, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And the other thing I'd like to comment on is the scientific literature now is absolutely clear on one of the points you made, which is people at any age retain a substantial capacity for regeneration and recovery. It's
every age. There's clear. Yeah, absolutely clear. Nobody actually loses a percentage of stem cells that are just as healthy as when you're newborn. Get a micropulse.
It's really true.
The code Dr. Deagle, you'll save $30 with the code Dr. Deagle. We'll have you back soon. Stay right there, Doctor. So the Nutrimedical report. I've got a project I've been working on for many years. I started work on doing research on diabetes back in the early 1980s with the head of pathology, Dr. Otto Hewen. And because I was a background in quantum nuclear physics and advanced chemistry, biochemistry, intermediate metabolism before I went into medicine, I've always looked at it as a scientist. And now I put this kind of like overall, I have a vision of where I see mountain red velvet. Right now you can get mountain red velvet from us here at Nutrimedical. You can combine it with things like our Myco D2, MyCell, Microdose, etc., growth hormone releaser, etc., and all of our other things, Collagen Max. There are signal transducers like Lumen Photon, Micropulse, mild hyperbaric oxygen with ozone, and so on. What I envision, Karen, is at some point in the future, a surgical version, not just, I would like to see strips and granules be packed into wounds by surgeons. I'd like to see an intravenous microgranular form so that you can go to a center if you've got marginal kidney or heart or other function and you're trying to regenerate organs. You go in, they set up an IV for half an hour to give you the intravenous form of mountain red velvet that will bypass the ability of the body to break down some of the fragile ECM or extracellular matrix. And then you go into a special chamber with mild hyperbaric oxygen and a morphogenic field to actually stimulate your body to regenerate your organs. With like a big version of and in fact in trauma cases, what I want to see is what I call a trauma ambulance, which would be quite a bit different than the one we have now. It would be a mild hyperbaric ambulance where they would cool you off very quickly with maybe a cooling system with liquid nitrogen or something. They drop your temperature like a rock, give you an infusion through the neck of a transdermal free radical blocking molecular combination of natural molecules, so that literally it stops free radicals immediately. Once you get your core temperature down to about 86, 87 degrees, you don't have to drop it down to freezing. You can't die. You literally can't die. Now, what you do is you then take them to the trauma center, let the surgeon at their leisure fix all the holes in you if you've been gone through a car accident or gunshot wounds in a MASH unit in the military, and we put you in a suspended animation chamber for, say, a couple weeks in an artificial coma, and then we resurrect you, literally regenerated weeks later after you come out of the chamber. That's what I want to see in the future. And I also think that in the future, too, we're going to also have people buy what I call life insurance, not so when you die, but life insurance to keep you alive. So you'll have a biometric, if you want to call it, body monitoring system that'll monitor your body parameters, and literally signal back to a health unit to pick you up that you're having a cardiac arrest or an arrhythmia, or you're in the process of having a stroke, or some metabolic parameters going way out of whack. And then to get you back, and then one of the first things they're going to give you, besides things to block the free radicals, is ECM, mountain red velvet, intravenous ECM, or extracellular matrix. And once you have that, you are now functionally going back into what I call my hyperbaric chamber. I call it the egg, because it looks like it. It looks like a big egg. It's 5.5 feet tall, about 6 feet wide. I can have 2 chairs in there and a desk. It looks like a giant egg in my office. And people say, "Look, that looks egg-like." I said, "Yeah, I go back in. I'm back in a sense, in hyperbaric utero." And and people say, "Well, where do you come up with all these ideas?" I said, "Because I've never been a box guy." I like imagination. I think that really we imagine ourselves into the future. It says in the Bible, "Now they are in one place and of one tongue. Nothing will be withheld from their imagination." We are collectively the bride of Jesus or God, and we collectively have God-like powers of creativity. Now, we can create good or evil, and the good things are we can take illnesses like cancer, and instead of succumbing to genes, we take the right nutraceuticals to jump over the gene defects. And instead of succumbing to, say, making ourselves half cyborg with a joint replacement, or letting our liver deteriorate, or our heart muscle, or our blood vessels because we're under glycation stress from sugar from diabetes or prediabetes, which now 3/4 of the population by the time you're 65 are diabetic or prediabetic. And by the time you're 75, it's about 98%. So what we're dealing with is a population that is getting sicker earlier, yes, and staying old in a decrepit state longer.
Yes.
And they're often on polypharmacy, which means they're out of their mind because they're on so many drugs they can't recognize their geriatrician. And they're often over-surgeried, over-medicated, and often put in nursing facilities. And of course, Obamacare says basically, when you get too expensive for us to take care of you, we'll just withdraw care and give you a bathtub full of narcotics and kill you. Yes. Or they have what's called the dignity pill. Believe it or not, they do this here in California. They give people, even though it's illegal, they give them the dignity pill, which means once you get old enough or you got cancer or whatever, if you want to, here's the pill, just pop it and you're done. Believe it or not.
Oh, dear.
Now Dr. Deagle is, I do what I call ask questions. There's nobody else in radio or TV that is even remotely like me, period. Number one, I don't just, people say, well, the other guest, I had one guy and it was really good. I like him, John B. Wells. He said, I don't ambush my guests. I do. I ambush my guests. If they have good ideas, I love to collaborate with them. I'll dance with them. But if they say something harmful to my listeners, God help them, literally, because it's going to get ugly. And I would love to run with people that have good ideas, like Dr. Bob Dennis working at NASA on all these new IRB projects for regeneration. You have it right now, people. If you are falling apart, which means every year you're getting older, and if you're aging, which is not pleasant, and people say it's the golden years, I want to revise that and call it the rusty years. How's that?
And
it's the rusty.
From people is, oh, I ache, oh, my joints creak as I get older when I step out of the chair. And that's what when they take them out of the velvet, they say, I don't creak anymore.
Isn't that wild? And of course, it frustrates their doctors because the doctors go, oh, you're ruining my business. I wanted to give non-steroidals. I wanted to do a joint replacement. I wanted to put them in the hospital. I wanted to do a defibrillation of their atrial arrhythmia. When you start healing your conduction bundles in your heart, and you're taking high-dose magnesium, you're taking forced colon and cardiovascular and so on, when you're revising the physiology and your heart is actually healing, when your blood vessels are healing, when you're stopped degenerating your kidneys and your liver because you've killed off the pathogens and your DNA load is low, and now your liver sinusoids and your liver is actually rebuilding because you're taking Mountain Red Velvet and the right building blocks, Nutrifos, Neurogen, Copper Regenemax and our Minerals Plus and so on. Your body says, hey, I can do this. And people say, no kidding.
People say, I'm back out doing. I'm back playing golf. I'm back out working. I'm back out gardening. And it's like there's a new me. And you're absolutely right. It's healing the body and giving them back their life.
Right. I don't think people grasp how important this is. Example, I had a gentleman the other day, he says, I'm hypertensive, I'm diabetic, I got retinopathy, I have to have big icons on the screen to even read. He's a wonderful gentleman, very pleasant, but he's got to realize he's dying of toxic medical advice from his dumb doctor, knucklehead doctor. His doctor's not going to think out of the box. In fact, if he does, he'll probably get persecuted by a state licensing authority or national licensing authority, whichever country he's in, or his hospital privileges committee or his colleagues will go elbow him and say, for God's sake, don't outperform us and make us look bad. Don't give that stuff to your patients. Just stay in line, man. Don't give them Mountain Red Velvet. You'll cut off all their surgery. And, man, I'd like to, get Mountain Red Velvet. As I say, you're not a fetus, so you need it. Back in a minute. To the Nutrimedical report, we have Ron Patterson, and let's talk about lumen photon. We had the technology earlier in the hour talking about micropulse, and I often like to use both, actually, when I talk about people regenerating. We had a gentleman in the first hour that emailed in and was worried about cervical spinal surgery, and they were talking about doing a spinoplasty on him. And I have that, almost like the satanic sign, hold a cross up, say, no, you're not going to touch this body with your scalpel. I have seen so many spinal screw-ups by spine surgeons, it's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. They don't document, number one, that there's a spinal encroachment on the exit foramen of the nerve. They don't document that there's A delta or C fiber compression. They don't document that the spine is unstable, and they try to put stabilizing PLFI or anterior or posterior spinal fusion technology, including plating and bone grafting and so on. It's just crazy. In fact, as a medical legal expert certified in every specialty, not just some, and I saw IMEs from all over North America, including the United States, every state in Canada and Alaska included, and went to court sometimes 2 and 3 days a week when I was in practice in Denver, I can tell you, doctors are like out of control. And the first thing you want to think of is, how can I avoid that? One of the first technologies you want is to slap on your lumen photon pads. In fact, I recently had an interesting consult from somebody who was going to get a advanced dental surgery. And, of course, we have the setting called NICO. And the reason is it's based on the idea of reversing dental problems. But we use it also for osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, whatever you want to call it, inflammatory condition. Inflammation of your brain. You can do transcranial inflammation, put on the sides of your temples for regenerating your eyes and your retinas. I mean, the use of the lumen photon pads is just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, across the board from us. We first started using it on horses because that was what we were doing. We had the original stuff and we thought it was for horses. But it didn't take us long to figure out that my back feels better when I use it on my back. So it's
right,
and that led everybody else to do the same thing. So yeah, that goes back 15 years. So.
Right. Now, of course, what it does is the pulsatile infrared light entrains the tissues to pulse along with it and increases what's called the signal-to-noise ratio to turn on the good genes, get rid of the toxins, improve the circulation, and activate stem cells. That's in a nutshell what it does.
Yeah.
And it's tuned to the specific tissue because each one is like a frequency-modulated television station. So let's look at the TV station called mesenchyme, endoderm, ectoderm. And each of those core tissues turns into all the organs of your body. If you turn it to the higher frequency, like 6 and 7, it turns off inflammation. If you turn it to the lower frequencies, like frequency 3, 4, and 5, they're going to stimulate those particular tissue categories. So those are the core frequencies for stimulation. What tissues would be stimulated by frequency number 3?
Number 3 is neural tissue, skin, probably the brain, all of our
right.
Skin is,
so you got somebody with Alzheimer's, you turn the inflammation off with 7 first and then turn on 3, and you're going to start activating the brain tissue. If you've got setting number 4, what tissues are involved there? You're talking about ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, right? So that's so 4 is mesoderm. Which tissues are there? That's primarily the gut, right?
Yeah. The glandular tissues, liver, pancreas, stuff like that.
Right, and then setting number 5 would be endoderm, which would be?
All of our ligaments, tendons, cartilage, bone, muscle, and also vessels.
Right. So if you're trying to regenerate somebody's spine, you can do it on setting number 5 or go to NICO, which is a combination of frequencies you use for periodontal, osteomyelitis of the bone. And interestingly, you see regular bone we call the spinal bone, okay, and the bones in your fingers and hands and your spine. That type of bone becomes less dense. And the first thing it loses is its collagen before it loses the actual fibrils of calcified hydroxyapatite crystals that are on the collagen fibrils, okay, in lamellar, or we call layers. What happens in membranous bone in your jaw, it doesn't get less dense, it retracts away from your teeth. And what's left of the Sharpei fibers that hold the tooth root and the enamel and so on, that hold the tooth root into place. So eventually those Sharpei fibers rupture and the tooth falls out. Or you get what we call nica, which is infection around them, and you get cavitations and pockets. And that's why if you get deep periodontal gum disease, you get pockets around them, and eventually that infection starts to infect the bone retracts, and it doesn't get less dense, it just literally creates holes where the tooth was wider than the actual pulp space around the tooth itself, and eventually falls out. So when you start using lumen photon, and you take our antipathogenics to kill off the pathogens, and you take our things like Collagen Max, Mountain Red Velvet, Tendon Mender, etc., the jaw actually starts to rebuild, and the bone re-encroaches on the tooth, and the Sharpei fibers reattach. And we have lots of cases of people that do this, and they take our antipathogenics, they're told by the dental surgeon, oh, well, we don't use antibiotics, or if they do, they use something stupid like clavulanic acid or amoxicillin, which doesn't go through the biofilm. And they don't know this. Of course, they don't know any infectious disease. So when you start taking our Nutriodine, Allison Med, Silver 100, you take our immune boosters like NutriDefense, then you use lumen photon, guess what? You save yourself $20,000, $30,000 in surgery, and you don't end up with bone grafting and all the other crap. Pretty big deal, isn't it?
That's a pretty big deal, yes.
Yeah, big deal. And also, they tell you in the disclosure, hey, well, this is not guaranteed to take. And they'll use every kind of technique. They'll use platelet-rich plasma infused into the bone, which is a cadaver bone graft. It's not your bone. And they put that in there and then try to see if they can graft it. The problem is you've got to clean out the area. And you can use ozone, but it's only going to get the surface. You need to have improved perfusion of the tissue with biofilm-penetrating antipathogenics. Our Nutriodine is the biggest, baddest. Allison Med, next, and Silver 100. You give the triple threat to these pathogens. You boost the natural killer cells. You get rid of the cytokines that are causing inflammatory change with Power C, etc., Allergon, and guess what? It starts to heal. And you slap on the lumen pad, and you do that a couple hours a day, and your body says, hey, I can do this. I can heal. The same way we get people that have osteoporosis. We tell them, get a VibraSlim to exercise, take all of our things for your bone and your ligaments, and then start slapping on the lumen pad directly over the weak areas on the DEXA scan. So if your doctor did a DEXA dual photon scan of your spine and your L4 vertebrae and your right surgical neck or your hip doesn't look too good on the DEXA scan, those are the areas to slap the pad. And your doctor will come back and you repeat the DEXA scan in a year and he'll say, what did you do? And he'll look at you. But they won't call Dr. Deagle. 99 times out of 100, these knuckleheads will not call unless you threaten them with a legal letter. That's how bad it is. Now, when they do a call, they're humble, and I'll train them, and in a matter of 30 minutes, they'll be a better doctor, because they'll say, hey, you know what, I can reverse osteoporosis and nica, which is the infection around your teeth, without doing massive surgery or threatening that you're going to end up in a striker bed with a broken back or hip, or need a total hip replacement, which may not work because your bone is like moth-eaten, and that's not good, When knucklehead doctors do inappropriate treatment, they put you in jeopardy or danger or kill you. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm a straight shooter.
Yeah, we've been doing this for about 15 years now, and it's honest to goodness, and use it on everything from dogs to cats to birds, as we talked about in the past.
And you can't scam a dog or a cat, can you? Have you ever seen anybody able to sail or scam a dog or cat into getting better on these machines?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I see this show actually in advertising because I like nature shows, and they have this Rocky Mountain vet there. And this guy's a real character, you can tell. But I'm guaranteed that when he makes a pet and shows them love and care and makes them better, and the master's crying because their pet's taken care of, and he often does it gratis or free because a lot of people can't afford it, I guarantee you that pet has not been scammed into getting better. But when you start adding our technology, lumen photon on your doggy or kitty, or your little budgie birds or whatever, or your horse, and the horse is going to edge sideways in the stall and say, give me more of that stuff, man, that hip was really hurting, or my hocks, or they were part of the back of their leg. And guess what? A lot of horses aren't put down because they got lumen photon therapy, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just something survive.
Oh, yeah. They survive and thrive, and they look at you like, if a horse could talk, like Mr. Ed, they'd say, thanks, Ron.
Yes.
Back in a minute. Get your lumen here. We're waiting for Chris Jackson. Chris, are you there?
I am.
Wonderful. Let's talk about VibraSlim. After I get my show finished today, I'm going to get on probably for 15 to 20 minutes, most likely 20 minutes. I will use my VibraSlim machine for, I have a athletic bar, one of these balance beam bars that's used by gymnasts behind me, so I have power bands, I call body elastic bands, attached to it. I also have them that I use below. I have free weights that I actually use on the device, so I can do literally exercise every body system, but it improves proprioception while I'm doing them because I'm using lighter weights, but the effect of the VibraSlim is to multiply it, the G-force, by 3.6. So I can use a 30-pound weight, and it's equivalent to over 100 pounds. That's amazing, isn't it? So if I have two 30-pound weights in either hand, I'm usually having the effect of a fraction of a second of over 200-some pounds of weight. And that means that I'm getting the physical exercise of all those muscle groups that are recruiting the slow and fast-twitch fibers. I'm improving proprioception, so I'm not going to get injured. And I'm getting full range of motion of all my joints, so I'm getting better proprioceptive control. So when I do other activities, if I do golfing on an irregular surface, or if I start running, or do other activities, I'm less likely to get injured. So VibraSlim increases your cardiac output, increases your stem cell release, increases your growth hormone release, and your beta endorphin and dynorphins in your brain to counteract pain. It improves the tensile strength of your connective tissues. It makes you change your set point to lower your weight. It lowers insulin resistance because it stimulates the hormones to change your insulin levels and your resistance. It does so many things that no other exercise does. And the VibraSlim device now is, the price is, believe it or not, here in America, $1,299 and free shipping that's modular. And if there's any breakdown in any units, which, by the way, the motor is lifetime, you're going to get a new module sent to you. You can't beat this deal, can you? Because if you bought a machine that was even somewhat equivalent to it without all the bells and whistles, you'd be spending between $5,000 and $10,000 for a power plate or some other device. So tell us about the VibraSlim. What makes it so superior and such a superior price? Why is it such a great deal?
Well, nothing comes even close to it because we're the manufacturer, we sell direct to the customer, so we're cutting out all the middlemen. So, like you say, if you want a machine that's comparable to a VibraSlim, you're going to spend between $4,500 and $8,000.
Yeah, easily, or more.
Yeah, and they won't even back the machine like we do. They'll come with maybe a 1-year warranty, and if it breaks down, you'll have to send the machine back in a box, and it'll cost you a fortune. With us, we send the parts to you, all modular, super easy to repair, and simple. And we back the machines, like you said, lifetime motor warranty. So
right.
That's a huge difference in our competitors. The other difference is we've been in the business longer than everyone else. So we've got the research, and we're backed by many doctors and chiropractors, universities, and research centers. They all use our equipment, and that's why our educational videos are the best ones you can get by far.
Let's do a comparison of the two I call extremes. We have a young athlete, say, in their early 20s, and they're a pro athlete. Why would they use VibraSlim? Well, because if you get somebody like Gronkowski, they're less likely to rupture an ACL because they're going to improve the tensile strength. They're going to get better position sense or proprioception of all their joints. They're less likely to tear something because their muscles are so massively powerful, their connective tissues can't tolerate it. But you counteract all those problems with doing VibraSlim training as part of the training. So if they're spending, say, a half an hour, say 20 minutes on a VibraSlim machine with resistance bands and free weights, and then they go do pushing sleds around for football or they do other activities, it's far safer. I call Vibra Fit compared to CrossFit or just bullying it with super heavy weights without proper proprioception. And then we take a senior citizen, let's say it's grandma, and she's 93 years of age, and she's got a fragile spine. We already know she has osteoporosis. You don't want to put her at heavy weights to do other things, but you know you have to improve bone density. You want to start putting on a VibraSlim, even if you can get two nurses or two relatives stand on the other side and hold her up there so she's standing, she's going to start getting axial spinal stimulation that'll help to impress the piezoelectric crystals of her bones, so her bones will suck up the collagen max, the mountain red velvet, the tendon bender joint performance, etc., to rebuild her bones. And when she does that, she's going to start getting position sense. So 10 minutes times 3 in 1 month will cut falls by 80%. So every senior home should have these. Every high school and university should have them. Every office with cubicles should have it by their water cooler in the restroom. If you get on there 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes, it's a total renewal. You don't need to go to a full fitness center. You just have to have a little area or a cubicle where somebody can kind of just grab the bands, even with their clothes on, and stand there and stretch and take a few movements to get the crinks out. Sitting in a cubicle all day long is a very dangerous problem. In fact, they say now sitting in a cubicle is equivalent to sitting there drinking sodas and sugar pies all day long. I mean, it's that bad for you. But getting up and getting a VibraSlim, so every senior home should have them, every fitness center, every train station, every bus station should have a VibraSlim. These devices are now in chiropractic offices, rehab doctor offices, hospital clinics, extended care facilities, and a lot of the problems that we have are basically inactivity, but I think what the real thing I like to call is they're deficient in vitamin G for gravity. They don't have enough gravity per day. What do you think?
Totally true. It's the gravity there's nothing like it, and with the VibraSlim, you're getting small doses of gravity, which is basically building muscles, building bone density, and a lot of people don't know, like running and things like that don't actually build bone density, and it's negligible.
They actually decrease it. They actually decrease it. In fact, you actually get women that I have tons of them that have been runners, and they're running 20 miles, 15 miles a day. I'm thinking, you're going to break something, and then of course you go and do a bone density on their bones look like they're moth-eaten. It's like, oh my God. And the problem is they're losing magnesium like crazy, which is one of the crystals in their bone, because remember it's 2-to-1 calcium to magnesium ions and 7 water molecules, silica, boron, and manganese. If a lot of athletics people think, well, I'm making myself healthier. Not necessarily. Micro injuries to tissues and joints are related to lack of proprioception or position sense. So if you're a racquetball player or an NFL football player or basketball, 78% in the study about 4 years ago, showed 78% of all these pro athletes have serious tears that were just specifically looking at the shoulder that with a panel of surgeons would have required minimal or maximal major surgery on their shoulder. In other words, they got micro tears ready to rupture. And when you start using proprioceptive training with, let's say, resistance bands, which I use around my shoulder, I don't get any snapping, I don't get tendonitis, I don't get all the other things that would happen with other kinds of exercise. And if I do other exercise like free weights, heavy free weights, I pre-train myself to have better position sense and sensory control of my muscles so I don't tear things. In other words, I tell people no matter what else you're doing, whether you're cycling, running, weightlifting, mixed martial arts, wrestling, whatever you're doing, senior citizen just going for walks, trying to make sure your bones don't go bye-bye and your muscle mass stays up, you got to get a VibraSlim. It's that simple. If there's every senior citizen listening, every young athlete listening, everybody that's a weekend warrior should have a VibraSlim, and it won't accumulate dust like you walk the dog by putting out a leash and the dog's walking on it while you're watching telly. No, you're going to get on it because you're going to release of endorphins. You're going to feel great after you got 10 or 20 minutes on the VibraSlim. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is, and that's why the bulk of the large majority of the NFL teams and NHL and NBA, they're using VibraSlim or vibration machines in general in their locker rooms. Right. In fact, a lot of NFL teams, each has his own machine that they work out on, and they use it for not only for boosting their training to a different level because it works the muscles out in a different way, but they use it for all their injury recovery.
Well, I call pre-injury recovery. See, what happens, a lot of problem with athletes is they have high pain thresholds. So they'll keep playing because they have a high pain threshold, although they're micro-rupturing ligaments, tendons, joint capsules. And the problem is once it physically does rupture, like Gronkowski a few years ago, the Patriots, you're sidelined. It doesn't matter how strong and big you are. You got a blown ACL, you're out of commission. And if you want to stop that, If you want to stop a lot of the aging process of your ligamentous musculoskeletal system, you want to lose weight, you want to change your set point, you want to maintain your balance so you don't fall if you're a senior, get a VibraSlim. Save today. It's $12.99, free shipping in the USA. The best machine out there for the price. You can't beat it. Get body elastic bands, some Bowflex free weights, get an athletic bar above and behind you, bolt it into the ceiling, and I'm going to put up a full little explanation of my VibraFit program. It's real simple. It's inexpensive. You don't need a membership. You can do it whenever you want. 10 minutes a day minimum. I like 20 minutes. And it's amazing what it'll do for you. Back in a moment with hour number 3, Ann Morrison, our scientist, and her blog, Twyland, which you want to subscribe to, and Professor McCanny at the bottom of the hour. Back in just a moment.